Hey everyone, it's Emma here, and I have a story to tell you. You know how everyone's always talking about the wonders of meditation, how it brings peace and clarity and all that jazz. Well, I decided to give it a shot. I set my timer for 5 minutes. 5 minutes, that's it. I figured, how hard could it be? So, I sat down, closed my eyes, and tried to clear my mind. Honestly, it felt like trying to herd a flock of squirrels. Thoughts were zipping around, my to-do list was playing on repeat, and my cat decided that my lap was the perfect place for a nap. And you will not believe what happened next. I almost fell asleep. It wasn't the serene, enlightened kind of sleep either. It was the head bobbing, about to drool kind. I swear, my head snapped up with a jolt just as the timer went off. I was so close to a full-on meditation nap. It was kind of hilarious, actually. I guess my brain just really needed a break. So, let's begin our exciting journey of English improvement together with this story about my less than successful meditation attempt. And remember, new videos are released daily, focusing on English speaking and listening skills to help you improve and enjoy your learning journey. Hi there, it's Olivia. Come, sit with me for a bit. I've got a story to tell you, one that's been swirling in my mind like a gentle autumn leaf. It's about a visit to an old lighthouse, a visit that unexpectedly touched my heart in a way I hadn't anticipated. Picture this. A crisp, sun-drenched Saturday afternoon. I was perched on a weathered wooden bench overlooking the harbor, the salty air whipping playfully through my hair. Gulls cried overhead, and the rhythmic clang of halyards against masts created a soothing, almost hypnotic backdrop. I was supposed to be sketching the bustling fishing boats, my sketchbook open on my lap, but my gaze kept drifting towards the old lighthouse perched on the cliff edge. It had stood sentinel for over a century, its whitewashed stone worn smooth by time and weather. I'd seen it countless times, a familiar landmark against the endless blue. But that afternoon, it beckoned me with an unfamiliar pull. Something about its stoic presence, its silent witness to generations of seafaring stories, sparked a sudden yearning within me. I packed up my sketching supplies and felt a surge of excitement, that childish thrill of exploration bubbling up inside. The climb up to the lighthouse was steeper than I remembered, the path winding through wildflowers and wind-bent trees. My heart pounded a cheerful rhythm against my ribs, and the scent of pine needles filled the air. As I neared the top, the sound of the waves crashing against the rocks below grew louder, a powerful reminder of the untamed force of nature the lighthouse had bravely faced. And then, I was there. At the foot of the majestic structure. The heavy wooden door was slightly ajar, a sliver of darkness hinting at the secrets held within. I pushed it open, the hinges groaning in protest, and stepped inside. It was cool and dim, the air thick with the smell of salt and old stone. A narrow spiral staircase, worn smooth by countless footsteps, wound its way upwards. Here's where my little dilemma came in. I'm not the biggest fan of heights. In fact, I usually avoid them. But something about this place, the history whispering from the walls, pushed me forward. I took a deep breath, gripped the cool metal railing, and began my ascent. Each step creaked beneath my weight, a tiny echo in the stillness. The climb was slow, deliberate, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. But when I finally reached the top, the reward was breathtaking. The panoramic view of the harbor, the town nestled between the hills, the endless expanse of the sparkling ocean. It was magnificent. I spent what felt like hours just gazing out at the vista, feeling an inexplicable sense of peace wash over me. It was as if the lighthouse, in its silent strength, had shared a little of its own enduring resilience. Walking down was surprisingly easier, my initial fear replaced by a quiet sense of accomplishment. As I sat back on my bench overlooking the harbor, the lighthouse now seemed different. It wasn't just a landmark anymore, it was a symbol of overcoming a small personal hurdle, a reminder that sometimes the most rewarding experiences lie just beyond the edge of our comfort zones. And who knows, maybe next time, I'll bring my sketchbook and capture its beauty from a whole new perspective. Hey everyone, Sophia here. I have a story I'm just bursting to tell you. The story of my very first baking class. It was a crisp autumn afternoon, leaves the color of burnt caramel swirling around my feet as I hurried towards the community center. Sunlight, that slanted, golden kind you only get in fall, streamed through the big windows, painting the room in a warm glow. The air, usually thick with the smell of chlorine from the indoor pool, was replaced by the intoxicating aroma of vanilla and cinnamon. I was practically buzzing with excitement. I'd always loved the idea of baking. Those perfectly frosted cupcakes, those golden brown loaves of bread, they seemed like magic to me. But my own attempts at baking usually ended in, well, let's just say they weren't Instagram-worthy. So, when I saw a flyer for a beginner's baking class, I signed up faster than you can say, chocolate chip cookie. The class was taught by a woman named Mrs. Rodriguez, a tiny powerhouse with a laugh that could fill a stadium. Her apron was dusted with flour, and her eyes twinkled with a mischievous glint. She started by showing us the basics. How to properly measure ingredients. Apparently, my eyeballing method wasn't quite cutting it. How to knead dough, it's a lot harder than it looks. And the importance of oven temperature. Who knew a few degrees could make such a difference? We were making apple pie, a classic. Mrs. Rodriguez moved through the room, offering encouragement and correcting our techniques with a gentle hand. I felt a little clumsy at first, my pie crust cracking under the pressure of the rolling pin. But Mrs. Rodriguez, noticing my struggle, knelt beside me. "Don't worry, dear," she said, her voice like warm honey. "Everyone starts somewhere. Just patch it up, it'll taste just as delicious." And you know what? She was right. The real challenge came with the lattice top. I'd seen pictures, of course, those perfectly interwoven strips of dough creating a beautiful pattern. Mine, however, looked less like a lattice and more like a tangled mess of pastry. I felt a wave of frustration wash over me. I wanted to give up, to scrape the whole thing off and start again. But then I looked around. Everyone was struggling in their own way, some with burnt edges, others with dough that refused to cooperate. And yet, everyone was smiling, laughing, sharing tips and tricks. It wasn't about perfection, it was about the process, the joy of creating something with your own hands. So, I took a deep breath, and with Mrs. Rodriguez's guidance, I carefully untangled my dough and tried again. It wasn't perfect, not by a long shot, but it was mine. And when my pie came out of the oven, golden brown and bubbling with apple cinnamon goodness, I felt a surge of pride I'd never experienced before. That afternoon, I didn't just learn how to bake an apple pie. I learned the importance of patience, the power of community, and the simple joy of trying something new. And as I walked home, the scent of baked apples clinging to my clothes, I knew this was just the beginning of my baking journey. Who knows, maybe one day I'll even master that lattice top. Learning a new language, especially English, can feel like climbing a mountain, but you know what? The view from the top is incredible. Your accent is your personality, not a mistake. It adds a unique flavor, a beautiful melody to the language. Think of it as your personal signature, a way to express yourself authentically. Embrace it, own it, because it makes your English uniquely you, and that's something to be truly proud of. One simple thing that can really help you gain confidence is something you can do anytime, anywhere. Tell a story to an imaginary friend. Imagine you're walking your dog, or maybe cooking dinner, and just start narrating what you're doing or making up a story as you go. It's fun, it's easy, and it helps you get comfortable with expressing yourself in English without any pressure. Honestly, it felt like magic when I first started doing this. I saw a real difference. And you know what? I completely understand how you feel. Making small talk at gatherings can be especially challenging. You understand what others are saying, but when it's your turn, the words just seem to disappear. It's like your mind goes blank, and it can be so frustrating. Believe me, you're not alone in feeling this way. It's a common experience for many language learners. You will not believe what happened next at a party the other day. Someone asked me about my favorite movie, and I accidentally called it a film show instead of a film. It was hilarious. It got me thinking about funny language mishaps. So, tell me, what's the funniest mistake you've made in English? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Hey everyone, Emma here. I wanted to share this little burst of sunshine from my day, and it all revolves around the simplest thing: fresh orange juice. It was a Saturday morning, the kind where sunlight spills through your window like liquid gold. I was perched on my kitchen stool, still in my pajamas, feeling that weekend laziness settle in. But something was missing. That zing, that little spark to kickstart my day. And then, I saw them. A vibrant pyramid of oranges glowing on my countertop, practically begging to be squeezed. My grandma had dropped them off the day before from her overflowing citrus tree. Suddenly, that lazy feeling vanished, replaced by a sudden urge for something bright and refreshing. Now, I'm not a culinary whiz by any stretch of the imagination. My cooking skills peak at perfectly buttered toast. But making fresh orange juice? That felt achievable, even adventurous. I pulled out my grandma's old-fashioned juicer, the kind with the glass dome and the satisfying whirring sound. It's a clunky, heavy thing, but it holds so many memories of her sunny kitchen and the sweet scent of citrus hanging in the air. I started slicing oranges, the bright, tangy aroma filling my kitchen. Each slice felt like a tiny sun, radiating warmth and happiness. I fed the halves into the juicer, the mechanism whirring and churning, transforming the vibrant fruit into a golden stream. The process was mesmerizing. I watched as the juice collected in the glass pitcher, its color deepening with each orange. Then came the challenge. The last orange, a particularly plump and juicy one, got stuck. I nudged it, I poked it, I even tried to reason with it. Yes, I talk to fruit sometimes. It wouldn't budge. I was momentarily defeated, staring at this stubborn orange, my juice-making mission on hold. I considered just leaving it there, but the thought of incomplete juice, of that one stubborn orange holding me back from pure citrus bliss, was unacceptable. So, I took a deep breath, channeled my inner grandma, who could probably wrestle that juicer into submission with one hand, and gave it another go. With a bit of maneuvering and a little more force than I anticipated, the orange finally relented, releasing a burst of juice that sprayed across the counter, and me. I stood there, covered in sticky orange juice, laughing at myself. It was a ridiculous, messy moment of triumph. Finally, my pitcher was full. I poured myself a glass, the cold juice a welcome shock on a warm morning. It was the most delicious orange juice I'd ever tasted. Not just because it was fresh and perfectly sweet, but because it represented a small victory, a burst of sunshine I'd created myself. That simple act of making orange juice, the messy struggle and the sweet reward, turned my ordinary Saturday morning into something special. It reminded me that sometimes, the simplest things, the things we often take for granted, can bring the most joy. And who knows, maybe next weekend I'll tackle grapefruit. Wish me luck. Hi everyone, I'm Olivia, and I have a story I'm just bursting to tell you. It's about that magical feeling of discovering a new book series, you know, the kind that just sweeps you off your feet and into a whole other world. This happened to me a few weeks ago on a gloriously sunny Saturday afternoon. I was at the park, perched on one of those wobbly green benches under the shade of a giant oak tree. The air smelled like freshly cut grass and something vaguely sweet, probably someone's picnic nearby. I'd finished the book I was reading that morning and was feeling that familiar pang of bookworm sadness. You know, that, what am I going to do with my life now, feeling. I was idly scrolling through my phone, pretending to be interested in social media, when I overheard a snippet of conversation. Two girls, maybe college age, were spread out on a blanket nearby, surrounded by books. One of them said, "Honestly, The Raven Cycle changed my life. You have to read it." The Raven Cycle. The name sounded intriguing, almost mystical. I subtly, or so I thought, angled my phone so I could discreetly look up the series. Turns out, it was a young adult fantasy series by Maggie Stiefvater. The covers alone, with their swirling blues and greens and mysterious symbols, drew me in. I added the first book to my to-read list. A list that, let's be honest, was already ridiculously long. Later that day, while waiting in line at the grocery store, glamorous, I know, I downloaded the ebook. I couldn't wait. That evening, curled up on my couch with a steaming mug of chamomile tea, I started reading. And that, my friends, is where the magic truly began. The story, about a group of private school boys and a working-class girl who get caught up in a search for a magical ley line and a lost Welsh king, completely captivated me. Stiefvater's writing was lyrical and atmospheric. I felt like I was right there with the characters, feeling the dampness of the forest, hearing the rush of the river. But then, disaster struck. I devoured the first book in 2 days, desperate to know what happened next. I rushed to the library, only to find that the second book in the series was checked out. I was heartbroken. I'd become so invested in these characters and their world, and now I had to wait? It felt like torture. I considered ordering the book online, but I'm trying to cut down on impulse purchases, a constant battle. I wandered aimlessly through the library, feeling utterly lost. That's when I stumbled upon the teen section, which, I admit, I hadn't visited since I was actually a teenager. And there, on a display shelf, shining like a beacon of hope, was a whole stack of Maggie Stiefvater books, including, yes, the second book in the Raven cycle. Apparently, the library had multiple copies, just not in the adult fiction section. I grabbed it, practically skipping to the checkout desk. That night, I plunged back into the world of Gansey, Blue, Ronan, Adam, and Noah. Finishing the entire series felt like waking up from a vivid dream. I was sad it was over, but also filled with that warm, contented feeling you get after a truly great reading experience. And you know what? I learned something that day. Sometimes, the best discoveries are made when you least expect them, in places you've overlooked. And, perhaps more importantly, I learned that the teen section of the library is a treasure trove waiting to be rediscovered, even by us, grown-ups. Now, who's up for rereading the entire series with me? Hey everyone, learning a new language, especially speaking it, can feel like climbing a mountain, right? But you know what? The joy is in the journey, not the destination. Think about it. Every new word you learn, every conversation you try, it's a step forward, a little victory. It's not about being perfect, it's about enjoying the process and watching yourself grow. You're already amazing for taking this on, and each small step builds your confidence. Believe me, you've got this. One super fun way to practice speaking is by simply explaining your favorite hobby. I love baking, and I find myself talking aloud about it all the time, even when I'm alone in the kitchen. Okay, now a pinch of salt, maybe a little more vanilla. You can do the same, whether it's painting, gardening, or playing video games. It's such an easy way to get comfortable with using the language in a relaxed setting. And you know what? You're already an expert on your hobby, so the words flow so much easier. I know what it's like to understand almost everything but freeze when it's time to speak. Worrying if you're speaking too loudly or softly is something I've definitely experienced. Like, am I whispering, or am I practically shouting? It's like this inner volume control that goes haywire sometimes. It's perfectly normal to feel this way, especially when you're still building your confidence. You're not alone in this, trust me. Speaking of building confidence, you will not believe what happened the other day. I was at the grocery store and overheard someone practicing their pronunciation. Honestly, it felt like magic. Their dedication was so inspiring. It got me thinking. How do you practice English pronunciation daily? I'd love to hear your tips and tricks. Sharing our experiences is such a powerful way to learn and grow together. So, let's chat in the comments. Hi everyone, I'm Sophia. Come, sit with me for a bit. I'm perched on this park bench, watching the late afternoon sunlight dapple the leaves. There's a gentle breeze rustling through them, creating this lovely, whispering soundtrack. It reminds me of the sound of a language I barely knew once, whispering secrets I couldn't yet grasp. It takes me back to when I first started learning Italian. It wasn't a practical decision, not like learning Spanish for business or German because of family heritage. It was purely whimsical, born from a deep love of Italian cinema and the rolling, operatic cadence of the language. I pictured myself in a bustling Roman marketplace, bargaining for ripe tomatoes and fragrant basil, or sitting at a cafe in Florence, discussing art and life with locals. So, armed with a beginner's textbook and an almost embarrassing amount of enthusiasm, I dove in. Those early days were a delightful jumble of flashcards, verb conjugations, and the constant, low hum of Italian podcasts playing in my ears. My kitchen became my personal classroom. While chopping vegetables, I'd practice food vocabulary aloud. Cipolla, carota, prezzemolo. Even waiting for the bus became a study session, flipping through my vocabulary notebook. The challenge, however, wasn't the grammar or the vocabulary. Surprisingly, I found those rather enjoyable. The real hurdle was my own self-doubt. I'd freeze up whenever I tried to speak, convinced my pronunciation was atrocious, my grammar mangled. I remember vividly one sunny afternoon, Skyping with a language partner in Italy. We were chatting about our favorite foods, and I wanted to tell her how much I loved her grandmother's lasagna recipe, the one she'd patiently typed out for me. But the words caught in my throat. My mind went blank. I stammered, apologized, and finally, in broken Italian mixed with English, managed to convey a clumsy compliment. After the call, I felt a wave of discouragement wash over me. I almost gave up. Why was I putting myself through this? It felt like I was climbing a mountain with no peak in sight. Then, I remembered something my language partner had said earlier in our conversation. Sabagliando s'impara. By making mistakes, one learns. That simple phrase, imbued with such Italian warmth and wisdom, shifted something within me. I realized that perfection wasn't the goal. Communication was. Connection was. The very act of trying, of stumbling and getting back up, was the heart of the learning process. From then on, I embraced the mistakes. I laughed at my mispronunciations, celebrated the small victories, and allowed myself to simply enjoy the journey. And slowly, gradually, the whispers started to make sense. I began to understand, to respond, to connect. Now, the rustling of these leaves still evokes that feeling. Not of frustration, but of gentle excitement, of a world opening up. One whispered word at a time. Perhaps someday, I'll sit in that Roman marketplace or that Florentine cafe, not just picturing it, but living it. And who knows, maybe I'll even share my own, slightly less than perfect lasagna recipe with someone new. Hi everyone, it's Emma. Let me tell you about a day I'll never forget, my first time ice climbing. It's funny, I'm actually telling you this while waiting for the bus on a crisp autumn morning. The leaves are swirling around my feet, and the air has that bite to it that reminds me of the mountains. It brings me right back. It was a bright, but frigid, January day. The sun was glinting off the impossibly blue ice, making it look like a million tiny diamonds. I was bundled up in so many layers I felt like a marshmallow, standing at the base of this frozen waterfall in Uray, Colorado. My breath plumed out in white puffs, and my heart was doing a nervous little tap dance against my ribs. I'd always been a bit of a nature lover, hiking, camping, you know the drill. But this was a whole different beast. My guide, a weathered, friendly woman named Sarah, was patiently explaining the basics. How to kick my crampons into the ice, swing the ice axes, find secure placements. It all sounded simple enough, but looking up at that towering wall of ice, my stomach flipped. It just seemed so vertical. I took a deep breath, remembering what Sarah had said about focusing on the small steps, not the whole climb. I kicked my left foot into the ice, a satisfying crunch echoing in the frosty air. Then my right. I swung my axe, the sharp point biting into the frozen surface. And then, I started to climb. The first few moves were clumsy, awkward. I felt like a newborn giraffe trying to navigate an ice rink. My arms burned, my calves screamed, and my fingers, despite being encased in thick gloves, started to ache from the cold. But slowly, something shifted. The fear started to melt away, replaced by a strange sense of focus. I found a rhythm, a flow. Kick, swing, kick, swing. Up and up I went, the world shrinking below me. Then came the tricky part. There was a section of ice that bulged outwards, a smooth, unforgiving curve with very few good placements for my axes. I tried a few times, but my axes kept skittering off the surface, sending little shards of ice raining down. My confidence wavered. Doubt started to creep in. I looked down, and for a moment, vertigo threatened to overwhelm me. "You got this, Emma." Sarah's voice floated up from below. "Just breathe. Look for that little crack just to your left. See it?" I took another deep breath, forcing myself to look up, not down. And there it was. A tiny fissure in the ice, almost invisible from below. I swung my axe, praying it would hold. It did. I found another placement for my other axe, and slowly, carefully, I pulled myself past the bulge. When I finally reached the top, the feeling was incredible. Exhaustion, yes, but also this exhilarating rush of accomplishment. The view from up there was breathtaking. The snow-covered mountains stretching out in every direction, bathed in the afternoon sun. Sitting here at the bus stop, remembering that feeling, a little smile plays on my lips. That day on the ice taught me something valuable, something that goes beyond just climbing. It taught me that even when faced with something daunting, something that seems impossible, if you break it down into small steps, focus on the present moment, and trust in your own strength, you can achieve anything. And maybe, just maybe, I'll try ice climbing again sometime soon. Well, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for watching and for spending this time with me. I really appreciate you staying connected and being a part of this. It means the world to me. If you'd like to keep up with our daily English speaking and listening practice, I'd love for you to follow, like, subscribe, and share this video. You know, before we go, it made me wonder, when do you plan to try a new hairstyle? It's always so lovely to hear what everyone is thinking about, and sharing your plans in the comments is a fantastic way to practice expressing yourself in English and connect with others who might be thinking the same thing. I was just thinking about getting a trim myself. See you tomorrow, and remember to take good care of yourselves, stay consistent, and keep practicing.